What's going on, gang? Today is a lovely Thursday, so you know what that means? It's Tech Thursday again. I know it's been a while since we've done one, but today we have a pretty interesting one. I know a lot of you guys are interested in specific tech questions about like differences in bikes and what to ride and what not to ride. So I thought that I would give you guys a little comparison of a 2018 bike versus a 2008 bike. And I mentioned in an earlier vlog, if you guys are real aficionados, then you know what I'm talking about. But basically, this is my former signature bike when I rode for KHE Bikes, and I was literally 20 years old. And this is the current bike that I ride, which is the Subrosa Noster S frame, built up with a lot of Shadow Conspiracy components. So I'm gonna give you guys a little rundown as to what the main differences were, why things changed stylistically and technologically, and what you should be looking for in the complete bike that you want to ride that's going to suit your riding the best. So let's take a quick look. All right, so here we go. So as you can see, again, this is a 2018 model, 2017, 2018, around there. And this is more of a 2007, 2008 model. So there's a decade in difference between both these bikes. Let me break down the more older bike, and then I'll show you more things about the newer bike. All right, for starters, let's look at just the standover height. For those of you guys that don't know what standover means, it's basically look at that top bar, look at the one on my current bike, and look at the one on that bike. So standover refers to the height of the actual top tube between your legs. And this bike has a very low standover height. I believe this one is like 7 3/4, and I believe that this one is closer to like 9.5, if I'm not mistaken. But, and I can look that up a little later. But anyways, the reason that these bikes were made like that was that at that time, people were doing a lot of tail whips, but they really believed that if you have this really squash like this, your foot would get over the top tube a lot easier to get on and sneak on to the pedal. But, you know, the bike started really looking like a scooter. I saw some where the gap between the top tube and the down tube was like literally almost a fist. So they quickly eliminated that. Another thing you guys can see is the handlebar difference. And just like, basically look at the difference in size of the bikes. Obviously this is a complete bike, so this is meant for like a younger demographic. But even then, as you see, handlebars have gotten a lot taller, including the head tube height. As you can see here, it's very low. This one's a lot taller. Tires have gotten a lot thicker. I mean, look at this difference. This is literally a 1.75 inch tire, and this is literally 2.35. So it's basically twice as big. Also, as you can see, the ball is still intact. All right, another thing is handlebars. So these handlebars are, I'm gonna say 7 1/4, and these are 10 inches. So there's literally, just in the handlebars themselves, there's a 3-inch difference. Another thing is, look at seats. At that time, people were trying to get really slim, so you can basically just do tail whips and your bike is really lightweight. But then bar spins, you can't pinch. And pinching, for those of you guys that don't know, is you basically use your knees to grab the seat while you do the bar spin. Check out the pool. She's empty today. And on my regular bike, you can see this is a big old couch. This is more like a chair. This is a love seat, or a big old wraparound couch. Oh, and look at that. That bike is trying to attack my other bike. But basically, look how big this thing is. You can pinch it real easy. It's real comfortable when you sit down and ride. And as you can tell on this one, since it's very low, you're not gonna really sit down and ride very long distances now, are you? I will add that this bike roughly over here, my aftermarket bike, costs about anywhere from like $1,500 to about $1,800, depending on the components that you add or remove. This bike was retailing at the time for, I believe, 350 to 400 pounds, which was about, at the time in 2008, maybe $600. So this was not exactly like a super low entry bike, but it does have a lot of components that are a little lower entry just to save you on the overall price. I designed a lot of these things at that time with the type of riding that was popular, although I was a little bit swayed by the company because I really didn't want a scooter looking frame, as you can tell. Again, very low standover, but they were like, hey, that's what's popular, that's gonna sell. So your boy had to sell out a little bit. Also, it's a complete bike, I wasn't gonna ride it, so it was meant for the children. I was doing it for the kids. All right, well, let's continue the tour. All right, so in the back, there's a 14mm axle with a chain tensioner. So chain tensioners nowadays are usually built into the frame. They put them here and they push the axle back. So that's kind of standard. 14mm in the front, not standard. You can't see that in my front because I have 4 pegs, but there's actually a 3/8 stud that goes in there. So a lot lighter. That's kind of like overkill. You really don't need it that bad. Another thing is that the legs on the forks, they're a little raked out. At the time, nose wheelies weren't as popular as they are now. So if you look at my bike, you'll notice that it's a little more, straight up. So that allows you to get into the nose wheelie position a lot easier. All my bikes and most of the bikes in America have to have brakes. Whether or not they remove them, that's up to the consumer. But as a law, when you sell a bike, it has to come with a brake. Obviously, it's a straight cable. I run a gyro, so there's a difference there. Now, these stems were trying to catch on at the time, and if you notice, there's no pinch bolts in the back. What they had was basically a piston system that goes here, and how this would work is that in here there's like a clamp, much like the C-post clamp that's there. Again, these are built into frames nowadays, and as you can see my stem, they went back to that system with the pinch bolts in the back, mainly because these kind of things over time warped and got messed up, and they really didn't save that much weight, and they were not that much more aesthetically pleasing. Another thing is that front load stems were all the rage at the time, and nowadays we've reverted back to top load stems, which give you more height, which is why, again, there's that big difference in standover height. Literally, there's like a brick difference. So you can see it's at the bottom of that brick. My bike is at the top of the other brick, basically. So there's that difference there because of, number one, the handlebars, number two, the stem, number three, the head tube. So bars not only were shorter back in the day, they were also narrower. The bars that I'm running over there are about 28, but they come at around 30. I cut them down to like 27 3/4 or 28. These come stock at like 27, and people still cut them down to like 25, 26 and a half, something like that. So bar spins were a little easier since there was like less metal going around. And let's see if there's any other main differences. Everything else is kind of still the same. 25 tooth sprocket, nice little lightweight chain. Grips haven't changed all that much. The pattern that I ride is S&M Hodder grips, and those are basically just a mushroom pattern that's been around since the late 80s, I believe. So not too much difference there. Yeah, so tires. Weights, this bike is actually really light. Like, I'm gonna guess that this bike is about 21 pounds, and my bike, it has a gyro, 4 pegs, and obviously the gyro cables and all that good stuff. So my bike is roughly about 25, almost 26 pounds, but that's because I have a lot of stuff on it. But if I really weighed it, I'm sure it's closer to 24 and something versus like a really rigid 25. But this bike was really light at the time. So these cranks are 3-piece cranks, but at the time, 2-piece cranks got very popular. And all it was that one side, this bolt wasn't there. The crank was actually welded to the spindle, and on the other side you had the bolt. Mine are the traditional 3-piece. I'm actually riding Stevie Churchill cranks just because they're super tough. And at the time, Shadow Conspiracy was out of cranks, so was just running that. And I think that's the whole gist of this bike. Again, pretty low, pretty slender, low bars, very skinny tires. And the reason the tires got so wide is because when you have a fatter tire, you can actually put more air pressure in there, and there's more area for air to travel when you land off of like really tall stair sets or roofs. And that's what was popular and is popular as of the last like 4 to 5 years. I mean, in 2008, it was more popular to kind of like ride trails and skate parks and be smooth and not really do the biggest, tallest gaps. Trust me, there was people that were doing it, but the bikes weren't very well equipped for it. Nowadays, people know that those tires are a lot better for that, and they just, I think, are more aesthetically pleasing. Also, back in the day, people used to run asymmetrical setups where your front tire was like a 210 or 220 and your back tire was a 195 or 210. They were never really matched up. Nowadays, frames compensate for that, so like the back triangle and the fork actually has enough clearance to run a 235 or even up to a 2.4, I believe. But I will add, if you're someone that does do a lot of spin tricks and you want to do rail rides and stuff like that, it is in theory better to have like narrower tires because you can spin off of it easier. If you think about it, if a tire is like this wide and it's gripping the ground, when you're trying to do a spin, there's more grabbing the ground. So if you have a narrow tire, there's less, and you can actually like angle more and turn easier. So spinning is a lot easier. All right, and there you have it. That's the difference between basically 10 years in technology and trends. Like I said, nowadays, the trend is a lot more street riding, a lot more jumping off tall things, wider tires, taller setups, bigger bikes. Back in the day, you kind of wanted to keep it low to the earth, finesse, lightweight, and just all around compact and small. that goes to show you that things do change, but in BMX, it's a cycle, and we ride bicycles. So that means that things come around, and I'm sure in maybe the next like 5 years, things might start changing to where bars get a little more narrow, tires do too, frames get a little more small again. It's just, you know, a change of the tide. But that's gonna do it for me today. I think I'm gonna enjoy my little pool here again because it's hot. It's about 92 degrees today. I already have a little bit of sunburn from yesterday, but I'm gonna try and even it out. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give me a like. If you're not subscribed, do so today because it means a lot, and I'm very, very close to 100K, and you know that means I'm gonna have to do something special for the channel. Anyways, it's always a pleasure. See you guys later. Ciao.
It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it.